thank you all for showing up and supporting the township here. I've talked to many of you already, and listened to a lot of you and what you guys have been saying and wanting and the stories and the experiences. And yeah, we've been putting together this tool that helps us kind of connect through various other tools that kinds of gets us in tension with each other in a way that makes analogical sense and harmonizes the way we experience commonality and individuality in the world. Um, it's it it revolves around this concept of the township as an anchor to bring us bring an analogy that we can all be familiar with. You know, oftentimes we'll say city or we'll say a county or a state or something like that. But I think the most central middle point of where we can ground as like our proximity of people that are locally contacted would kind of center around that word of township or that level that that range. So we selected for that for the purpose of an easy, graspable center point that we can all come back to and be familiar with without much trouble coming back to each other. Let's say playing another game again in the same space and being willing to, knowing that everyone is coming here with some amount of understood commonality. And we hold that together with this concept of the icon. And so I want to go over today the three big components and how they kind of break down into the rest of the tools that could be conceived of, understood, lensed through, and how they all kind of connect through a few critical bits of terminology that hold it all together but don't constrain it past a person's individuality. So with that, I'll say, Reed, would you like to story Sherpa us through this? Get us started.
Let me give a little bit of context by what is meant with the story Sherpa. Within our project, we play with identity a lot as part of the game. We come up with these sort of sparketypes or archetypes that really spark us personally, that get us excited and like exemplify certain affinities or traits we have. One of mine is the story Sherpa, one of my favorites rather, which is to participate in such a way to move the story forward and try to keep an over the top perspective how to keep the whole story moving as one, but also to tell stories with stuff, and so we have this sort of dialogue in which a voice is said in one way, a voice is said in another way. Neither voice tells the whole picture. Put the voices together into dialogue, we have more access to the picture. Add another voice, add another voice, add another voice. In fact, add all the voices that are inside the circle, and that's the dialogue. So from here, as presented, this is a concept of language. Like its focus is about the landscape of languages that are available to any collective dialogue and how to potentially harmonize these into an ecological systemic process of interrelated communicative platform. We've got a variety of tools that we've developed throughout the years. We're beginning here with an intro to our terms, some of the tools and games we use, then move into like some more of the structure, while also trying to highlight that these are just examples of the system. And I got a message. Might ask for fewer $10 words. We're going to make some art here, and we're going to show some tools that we use to help our language and our communication. And that's largely it. And the first tool, most relevant tool, is on the next slide. Thank you, Victor. You were muted, Jim.
Haha. All right. So yes, less $10 words. Fair enough. There will be a lot of more expensive words in the future. We're hoping to get down to the very, let's say, the most optimized efficiency of words. They're going to be expensive, but if you get to know them, they're not too hard, and they kind of work together. And so it's about stepping into those $15 words through the fives and then the tens, and we'll get there. So
Hey, I also want to extend the offering to Christy to step in and fulfill her avataristic role at any time she feels called, which is to be a bridge building translator of out of $10 words into whatever denomination of words is.
100%.
yes, perfect. Thank you for that, both of you, and also Matthew. Very absolutely again, same role, quatrain. All right, so back to the three words. We have the township, we have the icon, we have the iGame, and these are again just starting points. But the reason we put the I in front of it is for various reasons. The I's you see there are it for infinite, like the infinite game. The infinite contract is what this is. You're looking at here, which is kind of an infrastructure for how to blueprint for how to build the concepts through the same structures over and over again. And so, what is it? Well, pretty much pretty much a lens. It's a game board. It's a way to see through and spectrumize whatever concept you're looking at, and to hold those tensions similar across various games that you could play with it. So crossing personality types like the Myers-Briggs, with, let's say, integral theory, and how people break down on that scale. Not to say that any of these are correct or right, but that they all have pieces of information, perspectives that do some amount of that breaking down work for us. So we can take each of those and combine them together, and any others, and get some amount of understanding ourselves of what's common between them. And the deeper we do this, the more understanding we have of those systems. But the better part of that is that we can use the same common languages built off of this to express those experiences that we've had with testing out any of those other lenses, or this lens, or whatever you have, whatever you want to put through it. So it's well, actually, what do you think, Reed? On to the next slide.
I'm gonna try to use a $5 word
Yeah.
and $1 word. Schema and story. I want to highlight how this pattern here, well, everyone in the group is a translator of this symbol. No one's got the definite way of saying it, right? We're all translating into our own languages and then sharing with each other what our translations are or what our interpretations are, and finding how to harmonize our individual perspectives in such a way that collectively is generative collectively. So schema is just a shorthand for like any belief, any thought, any collection of neurons firing in the brain that I draw out of this. Here's a collection of parts that I've made into a whole image. Story is the telling of those parts as a whole thing through expression. And so that's really, I think the power of this is its transparency, is that it's just a symbol until you put meaning on it. And so the words that we have to the right here are just our interpretations from a time, and they're not the only interpretations of how to use this symbol, and they will not be the end of coming interpretations. Matthew.
I just wanted to say that to me, one of the most powerful parts of the icon is that it tensions in counterbalancing points. So you have the orange and the blue, and the yellow and the purple, and the red and the green, and the black and the white. And likewise, each of the symbols within it are actually various ways of looking at the same arena, but in a different way. And so there's a lot of transformations that happen so that you can use the same bit of data, plug it into the icon, and each part of the icon transforms the way you look at that piece of data. And that's been very important to me.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So, let's say, how do we use this thing? Well, we play the I game on this, and the I game is just a shorthand for the infinite game that everyone's already playing. That the idea is that if we can create a simulation that's close enough to the structures of reality, but scalable, that we can simulate basically any scenario we can come up with, including like what we just spoke about personality types and various archetypes for anything. And so the iGame lets us do this in a gamified rule structure that mirrors on various levels to various dimensions. It scales out in its application in almost, well, let's say all directions as far as we understand. And the idea is you start real simple and you work your way out to emergent situations, emergent experiences. So with the iGame, the idea is to break down any situation and gamify it. If you're not familiar with gamification terms, there are so many resources these days for how to become familiar with this. A lot of the media that you might run into has aspects of this built into it. The books you've read have aspects built into it. These call them the elements. We're talking about fire, earth, wind, and water. You experience these things on a daily basis. To some degree, some amount of mixing of these things is in your experience and must have been, because that's the world we live in. And so in this case, we're using that language as a starting point because we know it's common to everybody who's here and operating. And our use of this analogy of those elements can have multiple different relationships to each other. We just arranged them this way so that we can talk about it in what we found to be a common sets of rules that are kind of intuitive to everyone. And we can play around with these all we want because we're not confined to this arrangement. So however you end up thinking about it, if you just turn the dial, is what we say, a little bit, you can see this amount of information from another perspective, someone else's perspective, easily, and translate those experiences. And so, using this common language, we built the game that can keep on building on itself. A set of systems and rules and tools that work together on that same pattern, so they can integrate with each other seamlessly with enough effort and time put into whatever it is. And so, yes, let's say, Reed, do you have anything about this slide?
Yeah, I want to note for one of the fun interpretations we had early on when we put elements on here. We're like, there's fire, there's water, there's air, there's earth. These can be like these X and Y axes and make a quad. Well, what's between these? There's 4 more circles. Oh, secondary elements. These are like the relationships between, say, air and fire's spark. Oh, that's a whole contingent additional framework for how to approach the elements, and magmas, fire and earth. And so these we've treated as very variable, had many names for them, these different sets, and they're meant to be variable. While the others are more constant. So there's kind of like this constant variable or state relationship type of dynamic. And when I look at the components, iGame utilization, and features over on the right, this is really resonant for me because I use my hands a lot. And I see there's 5 categories each one. I'm like, ooh, I can remember these super easy. I just count them on my fingers. And it's like, oh, embed them into my habits. But then I start to apply some of the rules that we discovered amongst us, like component and iGame utilization. Well, iGame utilization could be looked at as the relationship between the primaries, which are the components. And so elemental foundations, that's this image we're showing right here, which we're like, okay, let's just found our language on these elements. And we get a category system, categorization between slot system. So between elemental foundations and slot system is a method of categorization. Okay. So what's next? Between slot systems and township districts, tension holding is the relationship that is afforded. Between township districts and character development, connection scalar, and on from there. That each of these follow the same core pattern, but are told as distinct stories every single time. And so can be integrated together with every additional set you add to it. I think that's really cool.
Matthew?
One thing I want to be sure it's clear about is, you've heard the word analytical probably, and it usually has to do with, formulas and math and these really linear, tight pieces of data being used, which by Ian McGilchrist's definitions or of understanding of the hemispheres, it's very left hemisphere. The left hemisphere loves its data, it loves to grip it and utilize it in a very mechanical almost way. These are analogies. And the interesting thing about analogies are they're more stretchy and squishy. You could almost say even transparent. And so it allows almost anything to slot in there. Any topic you can use, you can fit into any of these. But depending on which element or sub-element you stick it in, it's going to change what you're looking at, the way you're looking at it. Transforms it. And so what we're doing is trying to involve not just the analytics of a situation, but every dimension of something by using a set of tensioned analogies. These analogies are held together in a kind of geometric structure that gives them an additional layer of meanings by the way that they're tensioned against each other. And that provides a lot of, spark for me, which is an element there. But it also allows me to give intuitions a clearer name so that I can understand where they're coming from. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Way to use the structure to explain the structure. It's pretty good. All right. So the basis for back to the township, the icon, the iGame. Okay. So now, for anyone who's willing, we've got a bit of a game to play using this concept, and just on a voluntary basis. If you want to participate, if you're inspired to, absolutely. But it comes in. It comes as a set of associations. So we said a lot of terms here, and we've talked about what the township is. We haven't really gone into the township districts itself, some of the more technical stuff, I suppose. But to get an idea of how these terms might be relative to you, playing this game of these free associations might be fun to just do in your head, or if you want to participate and throw out some things that come to mind, fantastic. Hey, Reed, yep.
I believe that is the next slide, the questions.
Yes. So I was just prepping up for that slide. After or through this, it would be a matter of like, take note of the next couple of terms. So see which ones resonate with you. See if any one of these words is something that is a significant experience or a feeling or anything that comes to mind. Just keep it in mind. Okay, so for the township itself, we use that icon, but it breaks out into the quads, those four kind of areas. Well, all these 4 areas are in the township, as you might see here. Like each of the districts makes up the whole, but each of the districts also has those 4 quadrants in it. So aspects of the first district, the school. You might think of this as what people would go through in the first phase of life. So reading this like a clock, we would say, from 12 to 3 is the first phase of life. And everybody learns, and they have to learn through their entire life, or they can stop, but some people choose to stay learners throughout their entire life, and we could say that they primarily reside in or work in the school district. Then you have the next phase of life, the shop, where now you've learned enough to be productive, and now you've got to be an adolescent. You've got to start working, start finding skills that you can apply, start making things, be productive and contribute in order to make a living and do all your basic survival needs, the things that you would have been provided for in the school. So second phase of life. Third phase of life, the halls, where now you're talking about what your work is contributing to. What are these bolts you're making, and what are they going to bombs, or are they going to buildings? So like this is where you could get into the politics of your local area. This could be where you're just getting together as an organization to start building something, but with a project in mind, not just construction of the artifacts or the products that you'd be making in the shop. And then in the towers, it's like the 4th phase of life, where you go from the adult phase to the, let's say, elderly, or not elderly, but the elder phase. And this might be where you're retiring, but you're still maybe contributing. But even if you're not there as an elder right now, we can think of an elder as a wisdom, or the wise way that you start building your life. Or let's say we're calling it the towers because the towers are built in a town, on a platform. Let's say you're giving a piece of land in the town and you're contributing to it, you're working in the town. And so there's an amount of exchange there that could be said of the towers, everyone having their own personal tower as their home, even if not an actual physical tower. You could call your house your tower, but you could also call yourself the tower. You're building yourself in the town and having that physically represented by living in the town. So with those 4 districts, just those 4 alone right there, we can say around that is the town square. I did these out of order, sorry for that, but that the town square, the rest of those districts form around the town square. And the town square is where we would all be meeting and mingling and talking, and the stories get shared and the experiences get shared. So there's these 5 districts. And then the 6th district would be, let's say, outside of the town. We call this the Sacred Mountain Range. The idea is that it's the wider landscape, and everybody's got a pilgrimage to their own sacred mountain. It could be shared sacred mountain with other people. It could be individualistic. It could be your own mountain that no one's ever heard of. But it is your pilgrimage, and that district is not one that any one person can claim. It's the wider landscape. So you have the inside of the town and the outside of the town, basically. And so with that, that's the township, the 4 districts, and everything that we do from here pretty much falls into one of the districts to some degree. And we can play around with it as much as we'd like until we find some amount of commonality or agreement. When that gets met, then we can make a map of it. That way we all see it, understand it, and we can have conversations through it. We can have stories through it. We can come to conclusions. We can solve problems. We can do a lot with, my argument would be anything, with the right map of how we understand these things together. And so the township is aimed to do that mapping with each other at various levels, at various scales, but using properly language that's been properly derived from the commons to anchor us into to more precisely what we're saying or what we're trying to express from our personal experience. And I think that all starts with one's personal experience of affinity, like what affinity being, what resonates with you, what are you, how would you describe your I don't know, your joy for doing things, or your flow, or your or the mountain that you're climbing. Like how do you describe yourself? What do you resonate with? What's your affinity? And we use the elements primarily.
Would it be that driving force?
Yes.
That driving force within?
Yes.
Okay.
And so, yeah, Reed, anything else on this slide before we do the game part?
As with every slide, there's so many things to say, from $10 to $100 to 1 cent words and all the in-betweens. I think the thing that leaps out to me the most is that I don't think you did anything in the wrong order. I don't think there's necessarily a right order to do it. There's just a way that we find to be the most common path we've walked over time. But we've walked it in different orders many times, and it's been potent every time. Right? It's a trackless ground. It's not there's no one right way to do it besides that way, which harmonizes the most language for the most people, so they can hear each other and communicate effectively. Which is all
Fair
the way.
reminder. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
And so I guess I always say, one thing. I'll leave it at 2. So this district concept, when I'm looking at this very left concept, where we're looking at the elements, the primary and the secondary, then we have the second column from the left, which is district associations. As mentioned prior, this conception of secondary elements was to note for like a relational dynamic between 2 primary elements. And then what we found in our explorations of that space was that, well, that kind of defines a space for a certain type of activity that appears to be resonant for us in these ways. We were thinking, well, air, fire, spark, an ignition of interest and learning and education and school district. Like what gets us going? Now, how do we feed that fire so we can move towards our affinities? And so all of these districts are like defined spaces for the dynamic between elements, the relational dynamic between elements, and what can occur within them. And are, of course, are always very, that's 3, I'm done. They're always very, thank you. I love you.
All right, cool. Well, before we go to the next one, are there any questions, any clarifications? Does anyone have any particular thoughts about what we said so far, or do we just want to jump in and see if we can't spark anything?
I just think I'm not clear. I'm quite confused. And so I think if you can model a game and play it as I listen and watch, that's probably going to be the best thing.
Okay, good, because that's what we're going to be doing next. Right on. Let's see if we can't clarify that for you a little bit. Okay. All right, so for this, we have affinity play. And it really comes down to, well, the end of the game, the goal of the game is to see if you can ask better questions to get better answers. So we have these elements. We have air, spark, fire, molten, earth, biome, water, crystal, spirit, and using another one, pockets, as kind of a next layer of this. But it shows that it wraps around. So what we have here next to those is are a few questions to perhaps, well, just answer and see what comes up for you. I think the biggest question here, the reason I put it first, is what do you care about? Just generally, what do you care about? It could be anything. It could be politics. It could be education. It could be self-development, meta-crisis, sense-making. You know, everyone here's got something that they're interested in, but the question is, how do you define what that is that you care about? How do you express that to others?
Do you want us to answer?
If you have an answer, please.
I'm just wondering, right? So I'm just looking at this and I'm thinking, I mean, all of these look interesting and important, but I think the garden game for me is probably primary because of my concern for our ecology and our environment, and the very fact that that's the source of all our thriving, the things we eat, the land we walk on. So yeah, for me, that's probably number one.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. It was a great move that you made. Very great move. Well, okay. So let's say we were going to take that move a step further. I would probably point you at the person who created the garden game, Matthew, who, well, Matthew, if you had anything to say about that particular.
Yeah, how do I want to say anything about that? So it's interesting. I just played around to the garden game about 2.5 hours ago. I have a lot of the same concerns you're talking about. Specifically, I made the garden game because to me, it's very important to be able to have conversations with people in such a way that truth is discovered and differences in opinion can be resolved. And that's what I generally made the garden game to be. The type of garden game you're referring to, though, probably far more important than that. So I'm happy to see you're resonating with that.
I'd like to offer a perspective on the garden game. We just did a test session, the session prior to this one, and it's been an ongoing thing. And it will go on into the future as a developmental through play process. My interpretation of Matthew's creation, right? Because one thing we do here is we make games and then we consolidate them into like product. My interpretation is that the goal of it is to treat humanity as if it were a garden of collective interest, and to try to learn how we can cultivate our understanding of each other's perspectives so that we can move towards a more collaborative mind state and relationality with each other. To then, from there, instead of bickering and competing, turn our eyes to the garden we live in and to work with it ecologically, sustainably, regeneratively over time without undermining each other's work in that way through violence and competition and the things that are harmful to the ecology. That's my interpretation. It is a visual garden as well. Like that's the process of creating dialogue trees through symbolic card game play.
So did that resonate at all with you, Gen Z?
Um, yeah,
It's fair. I'll take it.
not a lot.
Mhm.
A little bit. I suppose I'm very I'm really keen on kind of being embodied about really engaging with evolution and natural ways of being. So for me, using the garden is a way of accessing how things have come to be naturally, and how we might navigate through that, and kind of, rather than dominate, we can fit in with nature. So I know that picture of a garden looks quite kind of tightly tended. And not that that's a bad thing, but it's kind of interesting that you've chosen that picture there. I've just for interest, I'm on an eco smallholding here. I'm a director of an eco village. So it's quite interesting for me how people mentally frame what they think the garden is.
Yeah, well, and that's what you see there is kind of a symptom of attempting to fit the concept in with video game logic so that we could use a representation to simulate it. But the great part about that is that if you have conceptions about and experience about how we might better represent that in the simulation without having to tell people, without having to explain it, they can intuit what's happening by their actions. Then they learn it a lot, we'll say, more deeply, even more so if they can teach it as well. Uh, so yeah, well, I'd say yes. Thank you very much for that move. Yeah.
I also want to note that image there is the map we are occupying here at Gathertown, and
Okay.
it is meant to be a circle for us to inhabit. And there's a question on here: what would you change? And I would direct that to you. But Victor's had his hand up for a long time, and so I also want to acknowledge that his hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. So I am appreciated Jen for raising her hand and sharing something that she cared about. I picked up that she cares about the ecology and sort of also expressed appreciation about the game. So I think that this was in an effort to move us forward in doing an active gameplay, but I think that I would like to see us go back to like picking up the next step in gameplay after Jen has named something that she's cared about.
Yes, sir, and right on time too, because yes, that would be the next step back to, and we could take two directions, and I can keep going. That's what I would do, is keep on going up this list or down the list, and seeing what sparks with people. So, like, again, specifically, what ignites you? We just talked about that with Jen there. So we could say that's that move completed. What elements resonate with you? And this could be the elements we've mentioned here, or the associated words we've mentioned here, or the districts, or the literal elements, periodic table of elements. It could be anything. What excites you? Is it experiences? Is it going on cruises? Is it walking through the forest? Is it not having to work? Or maybe work not feeling like it's work? Or, there's no moves there. I'll leave these categories open. Somebody pops in, the floor is open. But so we already did what would you change? What parallels would you notice, or did you notice? Parallels between analogies, this would be. Like the workshop is a lot like like a studio, like an art studio, or the workshop is a lot like the economy, or the workshop is a lot um, like I said before, like a certain phase of life. Well, there's a few there. So let's see, which districts call to you? And this is kind of a compass question. Which direction in life do you feel most compelled to be in? Let's just use an example of somebody who likes the first phase of life. They like the childhood phase of life. They had a great childhood and wants to stay in the things that the society assumes are childish. But they stay in it. They have an affinity for it. Let's say they do go through the other districts and they do learn how to integrate with society, but they still like that affinity for the first quadrant there, first phase of life. Is there a way for them to integrate that, to use it with the rest of society? Can they bring value of their extreme experience that others wouldn't experience into the greater fold of hall, let's say, of society? Are there values to be brought there? Maybe. So what district are you called to? Drawn to government, you drawn to the workforce, you drawn to the life of leisure. Where are you drawn?
Raised. So I acknowledge Josh.
Yeah, I just wanted to feed back a little bit, really, and say that I'm really enjoying how hard you're working to like bring people together and just like encompass the complexity of plurality. Like I'm seeing you really working at that in a like just a tangible way. And so I just want to recognize that and honor what you're doing here, because it's really not easy, man. And yeah, it feels like there's so Jordan Hall mentioned politics earlier, which actually got a few things moving. And one of them there for me was the art of the possible. People had different definitions of it, but for me, the art of the possible was, and I'm just appreciating seeing you really working to bring out potential and possibility here, and I think that's worth just recognizing. For myself within the game, the spirit is coming out. It's asking me, can I ask better questions? And I'm not sure I can. But I have a few. I have like I have a wish to see what kind of reframes would resonate. I think, and so that feels down. And can you ask better questions? And so when I'm thinking about this through a variety of other frameworks at the same time that probably resonate. I'm wondering under what do you care about? Oh no, sorry, it's not. It's spark. I think I gotta. No, it's fire. Fire. I'm wondering if fire would be resonant with the smallest autonomous unit, and whether then molten work would be critical functions, whether earth range would be supportive platform, community then as necessary resources, water mind would become, in that case, the largest the largest holon, or all-encompassing holon in some way. Crystal schema would then move up towards intrinsic value, I think. Florian's highlighting some stuff there for us. But anyway, sorry. So, I'm just looking at it through another lens and seeing, do those terms find resonance within your schema, and do you find them useful or helpful as articulations?
Very, very much so. Thank you very much. Yeah, you're using the system exactly as intended. Yes. Yeah. That's the heart of the system right there. Is you can spectrumize whatever. If you just go through it like you just did, you can spectrumize anything in those scales, and then you have more room to play with between those concepts. So, yeah.
Thank you. That's, I suppose, my move over.
Fantastic. Well played.
I want to do two things. One is I want to appreciate Josh for that. That was a wonderful move. And I wanted to say that one of the great things about this methodology of using these analogical symbols is when people come together, they often have to have a common language. And yet what happens so often is people then simply start arguing over the semantics and over the language and over the terms. And what starting with a symbol does is say, well, shoot, it's just a symbol. There's no investment in it in the same way that people get with language. And the symbols that are on it are symbols people have all across the world. And it's instantly far more universal. And then I thought I would just go ahead and play the game myself a little bit. So I find myself in this moment caring very much about this meeting, caring about which would be, for me, the hall. This is a hall of friends together to discuss something interesting to them or to learn about it, in which case it would be in the school. So we've got some, I like to see the way these symbols can sometimes interconnect, even though they tension apart as well. And it's like we've got this hall with a school attached to it. It's great. What is exciting me? I'm excited that people are interested. I'm excited that there is interest, and I'm excited that there's resonance. Which elements resonate with you? Right now, the element I think I'm most resonant with, for some reason, is water. I'm not actually for sure why. That's just what's resonating with me right now intuitively. I think it's because I'm doing reflection right now. I think that's why. I think it's because I'm reflecting on what we're talking about and why we're talking about it. So, okay, I'm going to stop right there because I don't want to take up too much time. So thank you.
I also want to, well, thank anyone who's A, shown up, B, stuck around, C, taking their turn on the stage. So that's of course my fellow project members who came to do that, but also Jinsey and Josh. Like, thank you. These inputs are powerful and resonant. Like Jin, you're guiding us towards how can we better present what we're trying to communicate, which is not a system of dominance, which is not a system of a very tightly curated garden, but rather a more ecologically interdependent, interrelational sort of like showing up in the world, not just for humans, but for all of life, and ways we can plug back into the ecology we're drawing ourselves from. And so in some sense, we've miscommunicated in that we may have given a sense of what our personal aesthetic and ethos is. Josh, that was such a testimonial for me to hear in terms of your recognition. Like, it made me mist up a little bit because this is a kind of like a nervous territory for myself in that it's a hard thing to do. trying to work through the complexities of like human interrelationality through language. Um, and and so it meant a lot to hear that. I appreciate it. And I want to amplify the signal of the reframe. And Jim's like, yes, that's the way to do it. Like, don't take our thing as it is. To adopt, you must adapt. That's a mantra. To pick this up and use it, adapt it to you, to your framing, and then we have two different frames at least, and we can harmonize them and look at the relationships between them, and then start to like study where we're connecting and where we may be disconnecting, and how maybe we need a whole new frame to add, a whole new frame to add. Maybe not maybe. Maybe that's what we need is to get all the frames in there to harmonize them, and from there develop connectivity. Thank you.
Well said. Well said all. All right. Well, I mean, we've pretty much touched on most of these. The last one I'll say one more move and then we'll wrap it up. Is the crystal, the schema as it is. What is your avatar name? And this in itself is its own game we could play. It's definitely a game for a new game plus, where we take what we've learned here and build towards what we could call an avatar name. Of course, this game denotes maybe building a few prototype avatars and archetypes and playing around with personality types and all the other games we can play to construct character, essentially, building character. But for those of us who use the internet, it's pretty common to have a pre-selected avatar name. I'm going by Jim here, and Reed is Ayn Rasha, and Matthew, and well, Chrissy, I don't know if you'd want to go.
I just threw that at you. I've been hanging with this crew for like 6 months and I haven't come up with an avatar and just threw it out there. Chrissy B. Zen. It's my Instagram because
All right.
meditation changed my life. That's my passion, right? That's that mountain that we were talking about. So very cool.
Yep. Right on. Thank you for that.
And I find myself super curious about Gen Z. Like, I know that there's a Gen Zendal in there, but is the combo of that meaningful?
It's just my first name with the first letter of my second name. So the name's Jen Zendel. I just don't write it all in. I just put Gen Z. But it's unintentional to be Gen Z. I'm not, I'm actually of the Tower generation. So that's just a weird extra thing.
Did you say Tower generation?
Yeah.
I haven't heard that term before, but interesting coincidence. What?
No. I think
Is there an affinity that comes with that?
Well, you were talking about the Tower, being the older generation and what have you. So
you did mean that.
Yeah, I'm not Gen Z generation. I'm flipping 60s. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, using the language and I missed it. Wow, fantastic. All right. Adapting right into it. Good. Okay. Right. So that would be again an open floor game for anyone else who's got a name, avatar name that they would throw out there. I see one. Shadow Fire.
What Gipper Pack means for Gavin, if he has space to share. If not, that's A-OK too.
Oh, I'm sorry. It wasn't letting me click on the thing. Oh, what does it mean? Or what is it for?
Yeah. How did it come about?
Yeah, it's like the history of it's in 8th grade. It's an acronym, and I don't tell anyone what it means.
It's the mystery for
us. It is.
Yes.
I have very few secrets in my life. In fact, one.
Cool. Keep the mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
There's one from Victor here. It's V1PT0R as a nod to an integrated digital physical identity.
Love it.
That's my interpretation, at least, is that that's a 1 and a 0.
I
I mean, let me know.
All right. Cool. If there's any more, throw them out there. Yeah. And so, wait, was there another thing there?
There was a
my-
shadow fire.
Yeah, Shadow Fire from Carla. All right. Last slide here. And this is just noting for, I mean, now that we've talked about some of the language, here's some more intriguing language, a lot more expensive words here. But that, you know, this is just a list of a few of the seminars we can get more specifically down to tools we put together. It all follows the same system, so it's just a matter of which angle we want to look at it from, which one's priority to whoever's interested, basically. So, like this is not even the list. We have a lot more. But you know, regardless of that, it's mostly about just that we want to focus on what's most relevant to the people who are there with us, and that we have a lot of ways of doing that. So if there's anything intriguing that we can point out, we can start with that and do more of these kinds of seminars past Limicon to keep this rolling, to keep the township, the project township going, and hopefully something more tangible as we go. So anyway, I'll just mention this particular one, the barriers of entry, that first one. I thought that was an important one to note. That when coming to this project to contribute, to play with it, you know, that's all free and open. However, in the application, the practice beyond it, we say that there's barriers of entry, and the first one is that if you don't have a project that you're working on, a life's project, some kind of thing that you're doing to make sense of the world or contribute something, then you are the project, and you can come to this as you are, and all of the same lessons apply until you can construct a project from your time in the township. So anyway, there's also a lot more, but I'll leave it at that. Reed, thoughts?
I'd like to, well, just to amplify the signal in some slight reframing of the language, that these are all potential workshops and seminars, but they're also all game architectures, like unto themselves. And part of this experience has been really beautiful to me in our co-development of these game architectures, which are all open for co-creative development further. Like, they're not done. They're all like plug in, reframe, harmonize, like make big. It's boundless. But the point of entry for us into all of these was coming through the transparent icon. The very beginning, blank template of symbol, and all of these are emergent from that, like up to a degree of complexity and of type of dynamic between various elements that we then played within and studied, like how the play went, and built some basic rules and architecture for. And really, all the person needs to learn the architecture of any of these is the icon, is the basic icon. And that from there, they're just adaptations of it. And that's meant to hold the center, hold space for the center. That's all.
I'll add something. I've been meeting with Project Township for about 6 months plus, right? And I'm not your typical vibe cafe person, right, Victor? No, like I'm a singer, right? A lounge singer, and I like talking to ChatGPT. I have disabilities, as in dyslexia and ADHD, where I just never, and I'm very intuitive. So I'm like that airy fairy female running around, very much in my like acceptance phase and manifesting phase of my life. And I love AI, so I started hanging out in Vibe Cafe, and then I met these three individuals who came up with the I game, and I had no clue what was going on for a really long time. But the vibration of the space and the way they communicate with one another spoke to me, and I knew I wanted to be part of that community. And the rest came in time, where I'm just starting now with these slides to understand more how because a lot of what I've done, I do it anyway. They'll always tell me, you're doing the I game. It's the art of life. That's how you're processing it. And they're putting they're putting different paths together in ways where you can possibly add perspective to the perspectives you already have. I have AI, I have my soul connection, I have a lot of tools. And this is one more tool in my tool belt. And because I am with them and building, because inclusivity was my main thing, I'm like, I'm just not looking for everyone to just fix the world at this stage in the game, right? Everyone thinks they have the right way to fix the world, and they want you to do their things, and this is the cause. You have to resonate with me, and it's not like that here. It's more about stripping away all of the things that get in the way of us creating together. So that's what I've gotten out of this so far. Even though I might not always understand everything that is going on, it aligns with my purpose, my mountain, that and they're individuals who are like-minded like that. So I enjoy being here. So to give everyone here for the first time that perspective of not having to get it right away, they would tell me in the beginning, it's this, you're supposed to not get it right now, right? Like that makes sense to us because you're part of building it. So I just wanted to put in that perspective where they have helped me come, and they've helped me round out my perspective, because I was one way, I'm still forming who I am as a person, and they've been a big part of that. So, and yeah, thank you for your time. I just wanted to say that. I hope everyone has a great day. I'm going to be signing off very shortly. And I know that if it's aligned, we'll all see each other again.
I just gotta say, Chrissy, thank you as always. Like you provided for us some testimonial, and I gotta reflect it back. Like, my goodness, have you been a transformative force within this project? And that initially we were all relatively similar people, like, and then you come and all of a sudden we got more complex because we have a different perspective, a different approach, different dynamic, and it's immediately adapted the whole thing and really added a dynamicism and like an immediacy to this in a way that it needed. And that is, as you said so elegantly, yeah, you got to build it. You got to partake in building it to understand it. All of us, that it is bringing our personal contribution to it that makes it accessible and elevates every other participant. Like, it makes the world more accessible to us now that you've arrived. And that is just true for all who come and play. and so thank you so much. I love you. I don't want to hold you up.
All right. Well, that just about does it for the actual presentation and game participation. Thank you again. Thank you all. Specifically, I've talked to every one of you here and there, and I appreciate your inputs. Just know that all of this anything that I do, it comes from you guys. You know, I'm reminded of what I could put into these things. And if there's anything I contribute, it's because you guys are reminding me of it. You guys are showing me another perspective, what you care about. And so I do my work because I can only do my work because you guys have contributed, you know. So anyway, thank you for allowing me to offer my perspective on this. And yeah, here it is. We're started. It's here. If you guys want to participate, we like games. We like having fun. So let's have fun and do life really good. You know, really, really good. All right.
Are you guys going to shoot off? Or are you going to hang around for a while?
I can hang out.
But I want to take any special time from the presentation. I just like to have a chat because I'm curious.
Yes, please. Yeah, I'd say maybe a break, like maybe 5 minutes to
Sure.
read. Yeah, and yeah, I'm pretty much free for the rest of the evening. So whatever conversations ensue.
Yeah.
I need
I'm
about
Ra.
2 minutes. And
2
I will,
minutes. Everything's running off.
the rest of these calls, I will return.
I'll just hang out here and wait.
Stop the recording.
Stop the recording. Good idea.
This is where the real shit starts. You kidding me?
No, that's what I'm thinking. I don't want to. I'm sorry. We're
Oh,
just-
okay, fine.
Turn the
I was just
recording
trying to be
on.
helpful.
No, I'm joking.
Exactly. No, definitely.
No, I was joking. No.
So, how many of you, Matthew? How many of you have been working on this? How many of this team are actually people who are working on these games?
You're muted.
I bet you said something really wise there.
I said, "Oh well." So profound. So, gosh, the history of the game is something like I had a project, and I got on Discord trying to find anybody that was interested, and in a now defunct space called the Coffee House, I met these two guys that were working on their own projects, and we were just like, well, shoot, there's some similarities here. Let's see if we can put these together. And 5 years later, here we are.
Wow, 5 years. Gracious. So we've just scratched the surface then today.
Well, it's been a process of building it up and tearing it down, building it up and tearing it down, building it up and tearing it down. Because every time we built something, we'd find an issue, or we'd find it didn't quite do the job we wanted it to do. And so we just had to keep going. Okay, well, this, like one of our words is sticky. It's not sticky enough. You know, it didn't stick with you. It didn't resonate with you enough. So we tear it back down, start all over again. So it's been a massive labor of love.
I bet as you've been designing games, you're actually playing, aren't you? You're playing together. So you've been growing as you design, and as you discover maybe something doesn't work or something does work. That's kind of, I think it seems like you've all heard of Christopher Alexander. It seems like you're kind of vibing with the kind of stuff he's doing. I am doing so much work on his stuff at the moment. It's just blowing my mind how brilliant the man is, and how it what he sensed in terms of building and community design is far more fundamental than just as building design. It's fundamental to the way humans things are emerging in our world and being sensitive to those things. And I'm kind of looking at your game, and it took me, I mean, I'm pretty bright, but I struggled with it. I struggled to understand what you were saying, and then I started to kind of filter through there. It's almost like the tarot cards or the I Ching, that you know, like you've got thunder and the mountain, the lake, and they're sort of archetypal ways of navigating meaning. And maybe you can use all sorts of, yours is using kind of some modern things like the town hall or what have you, but they're kind of archetypal patterns and doorways to understanding. Am I getting it right? Am I
100%.
I find my deck at the moment, but it's one Matthew designed. It's a pattern deck that is inspired from Christopher Alexander and from other adaptations we've seen in the world. So pattern language are very much at the core of what we're trying to do, from the human to the ecological scale, not just architectural.
Is this Christopher Wolfgang John Alexander, British American architect and design theorist? Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure I was understanding what you guys were talking
about. Name Wolfgang. I never knew that. I've only heard about him for like the last month. So I've been
okay,
like,
great. Oh yeah. Okay, father of pattern language movement. Okay, yes. Great.
Matt's always got the great history, like full infrastructure.
Oh no, well I'm going to start reading about this person. So.
Oh, okay. I thought you just pulled that out of the hat.
No. I looked it up so I could try to track what you guys were talking about.
A really fun thing about Christopher Alexander's pattern language concept is that it's just spread like a meme virus ever since like he came up with it, which was kind of his idea in creating his content. Object-oriented programming is a programming language that's pretty solidly in the structure of like development and design.
That was Alexander.
Yep.
Oh, mad! Thank you for that little tidbit.
But it's,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
please. You had a thought. No, I derailed you. Okay. Never mind. Sorry, my bad.
No bads. Matt said a thing.
Oh, good then.
He said, don't stop recording. This is when the good stuff starts. He said, "Oh, I'm joking." I was like, "No. Take that joke dead serious." Our presentations of talking about ourselves are seeds that start a conversation, and then the conversation is what matters. Like that's it. So please join to your whatever you got.
Well, I was just taken back by that little bit tidbit. I really just that was all. I was like, "Wow, is that really the history?" So just thank you for that.
I don't know if it's been said already, but I mean, basically, like at the end of the day, I've said it already before, but none of this is new. Like, nothing here. I have created nothing here. These guys, you lay claim to what you will, but I've created nothing here. All I've done is taken what I've seen and what I've been shown and categorized it. Yeah, what's that? Read.
I am gonna counter tension a perspective in there. We have a principle. So part of how object-oriented programming works is that there's design principles that define for like strata in the programming language. One of ours is there's nothing new under the sun, but everything's new under the moon. So it's like these patterns are timeless, but we have created our versions of the maps of them. And every person who makes a map of these patterns, they've created that map. They didn't create the pattern, that's around. But the map is a thing that, well, they co-created with the world, let's say, to be more honest with it. They didn't create it out of nothing, but they participated in its creation. That's all I wanted to add, because I think it's important that be looked at.
Yep, very true. So yeah.
I'm thinking that because you guys have been hanging out together a lot, it's a bit like the Bohemian dialogues where it doesn't seem to be going anywhere for a long time, and then things kind of start to gel together, and it's a slow burn that goes very deep. But I think if you're designing a game, I'm just for me coming new onto your space, just some feedback, because I very much enjoy game design. I've worked on the design of the Glassbeak game. Some of you might have played. There, for people coming into it, for me was a really big, difficulty coming into it. And there might be ways of scaffolding people's entry a bit better into the game, like little little ways of entering or little practices, or I don't know. I've got a book here. I just pulled it off my thing. You might really enjoy it. Oh, is it back to front? I don't know. It's called A Theory of Fun. It's by Ralph Coster, and it's about what makes a game fun. And there's a kind of, it's almost like surfing. There's a sort of sweet spot. So it has to be difficult enough to be challenging. But when it gets too difficult, people just fall off because they're failing. So it's almost like they have to have small, successful, fun experiences, and then they build and build and build. You watch kids playing like a super complex game, and they're like, how the hell do they do that? Of course, they've done it 100,000 times before, but because they've iteratively learned the stages, and then their game gets more and more complex, and they start to understand, the landscape of the game and what have you. So it's kind of just as a bit of feedback for me coming in, it was like, felt a little overwhelming, a little bit not understanding, and I kind of stayed with it because I know, this is Limicon, they're super interesting things, and people, you're obviously still in development and what have you, and but I just thought I might share that. Yeah, theory of fun of game design.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I wrote that down. A theory of fun. One to check out. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Let's just give us a scale here, 1 to 5. We came in at like a 3, a solid 3, I'd say, right in the middle. And there's lower complexity, more efficient, more fun ways of just straight engaging with it. But we're choosing the middle path here because we are at Limicon, and we need those 4 and 5s as well. The ones who want to play the 4 and 5 level games to help us develop those level 2 and 1 games.
Even the people who want to play only level 2 and 1, come help us develop.
Exactly. Yeah. Not to exclude any. Yeah. No. We need translators.
All people.
We need facilitators and translators between these levels. People who have affinities for some level of that tower and connected to other towers. Is just to say, each of us has our own stacks of experiences and capabilities, and we need to be able to plug in at the various levels and create for those levels. And they're all necessary. There's no one that's higher or lower than the other. They're simply ratios of importance to power. Reading and Matthew.
Yep. I just wanted to say it's in some ways we went about this the wrong way, and you could say almost, because we all climbed way up. I know, I can see the expression. We all climbed up and we got into the most high level perspectives we could and started doing all this building. And it's been very hard to figure out how to take all that and connect it down to everyone else. Partially because when you're all the way up there, guess who your audience is? Everybody. Because your perspective is on everything. You're trying to see everything. You're saying, this can help the businessman, the philosopher, the theology, and the mother, and the child. It's everybody that we're trying to reach, in a sense. And so this has to be able to be packaged to anybody. On the other hand, part of our difficulty is also we're working with analogies. We're working with metaphor. And our culture just doesn't always gel with that well. We've kind of lost a lot of that over the years. As opposed to an Aboriginal where everything is a symbol and a thing that you live in and with. It's like they move through metaphor. That's their life. And they would probably teach us so much that we don't understand about metaphor. But I don't have access to him. I've got access to these guys and anybody else that we come across. So
We're all very polite, waiting for turns. I'm so used to chatting with people and interrupting. I'm dreadful. Sorry,
Well,
I know I shall.
by all means, though, because I think your offering is probably going to be more new to my fellow project members than mine. And so that would be the more powerful move.
Okay. So I think I forgot what I was going to say now because I've remembered to be polite. Oh dear. Matthew, you said, and I think you might be mistaken, that we don't have access to like the metaphors. So I don't know if any of you have read The Clear and Present Origin by Gebser.
Haven't read it all the way.
It is really amazing, but kind of my takeaways from it is that we probably have in our language and our bodies probably everything we need. So like kind of we use metaphors all the time and we don't even know we're doing it anymore. So when we were like learning to hunt and fish and what have you, with things like grasping, that term to grasp something, and then we grasp it in terms of understanding, or we project. So we used to throw spears where we could look to the future and where we wanted the spear to go, and we projected the spear. And the knife, for example, we used the knife to divide and cut things and to change them and shape them. And so I think probably we have a lot of tools. It's kind of a game that I'm working on where we have like Neanderthal tools and how we're still using them, and we're still using all the kind of, without realizing it, our whole history is with us here and now. So I think maybe we do have the tools. It's just recognizing where they are and playing with them, and I think it's really super fun to kind of, I kind of lost my train now. It's late for me.
Thank you for sticking around with us, though, and your beautiful contributions. On Monday, I'll be giving I'll be doing some art and that people can watch and join to their heart's content. It's on an embodied, modal, universal pattern language. And it's basically to point at what you just said, that the theory and the embodied experience is that these concepts are embodied cognition, right? They're embedded into our genome at this point, and we have access to them absolutely across the human. Of course, theory. I can't say declaratively, but this is how it sure appears to me. So like when I'm waving this thing around, grasp. I grasp this stick in a particular way. I can grasp it in the middle and have a balanced position, or I can apply force if I grasp it here. I can grasp it in different ways that highlight different attributes. What's true of that stick is true of all the body concepts. I don't need to use the stick anymore to see that I can grasp in different ways and articulate different motions, middle, balance, extremity, you contribute force through, right? And so it becomes this like pattern base for all interaction. Anyway, I digress. I'll talk more about that Monday. What I want to do is I want to note that this iGame thing isn't just about playing our games. It's about bringing your own games if you want to do the systemic ecology of game practice for this iGame. I have seen from every person present here a version of game that very neatly fits into our map of games in ways that wouldn't need to be changed whatsoever. Last bead game, that's a circling practice. That's this category. And so this is just like, that category game goes into this district and is placed in relation to the other categories of game there. And we can develop it through play with each other and use it to plug into all of the other districts as like an asset of bolstering gameplay there and have this feedback between them. Let's see, Carla and Josh, I have seen use the H3 Uni pattern language base on a couple different occasions and adapt it into their own bespoke version of it. There was the toolbox of transformation sessions, and then there was the creative a writing session on them. Tessography. We put that up here in what we call the four, which is using pattern base by which to coordinate complex gamified human interactions. And so the pattern bases are basic, you put meaning on them. But you add the superstructure, scaffolding, of how to collectively interpret that and to flow through it. So I bring both of those exercises in and say, oh, well, they plug in 3 and 4 respectively. Florin, I put firmly in the 4 here in the tower with this development of the Acropolis OS AI technology and how to attain coherence in a community at scale via a common ontology building, the knowledge graphing, like constant access to all participants to that. Like, that's a game that happens at civilizational scale. That's what 4 is there. I look at Victor, who's not here anymore, and I call Victor a 5 because that's the whole package. You take that circle and the 1, you make it inclusive of all participants. And so in trying to create a liminal commons that could be a foundational landscape for these games to run on, same concept. So in that light, I just wanted to highlight, come as you are if you want to play. You don't have to pick up our stuff and learn our language. Just the bare minimums to communicate with other people playing it. And then beyond that, just do as you are. And if you want to plug in with others, do so. Like it's not a control system. It's hopefully an enabling platform for co-creation and showing up in the world of love.
Very nice. Good. Coordination system. It's coordination. Yeah. Again, well said.
So, in terms of your what you've been doing in the background, so we've just had this tiny little introduction to a certain game. So you've got a whole basket of games and processes that you've been exploring, and with different teams or just with you guys. And have you got them are they sitting in a repository or a place we can visit, or is it still ideation and collection? What's happening with that?
Well, I'll say this. When we've been describing building up the tower and then knocking it down, building it up, knocking it down, each time we do that, we are left with packages that are still nice and neat and clean, and those are in repositories in our archives throughout 5 years of different programs and writings and so on. So what we've found is that as we've made this, what I found is that as we've made this simpler, simplified it, and had the pressure of putting it into the public, that it's easier now to just rely on what we've already done and what we know and build it now with the efficiency that we've got with everything we've learned. So we don't need to go back and pull all those things out. We'd rather be responsive to what's happening now, what's current, and just adapt it to that moment when it's available. And that was part of getting all this down to a packageable, it's still big, but it is still packageable, and we can lead people into it. And I think it's more important to do that, to be responsive. And since it's all in development continually, we don't have ourselves a organization formally that like if we were to do that, if we were to move it into the workshop and have it be more contracted and have some kind of economic flow for the products that we make, then that would facilitate the rollout of this. So anyway, Reed, go ahead.
All of that being said, yes, with all of that. So this isn't an alternative. This is just a yes and. We have graveyards of stuff in Notion, which is an app for knowledge integration. Like so much of it, we will be building like a new center of knowledge base into Coda, which Victor is integrating with the liminal commons here as just an alternative to Notion. and doing websites. I have several books I'm working on. Matthew's got a Substack that we are preparing to do everything that Jim said, of like converting the old material that's relevant to now into accessible versions of it. We've got YouTube, like we're going to start pumping content out. Our dream is that other people who want to partake will do the same thing and like pick it up and put it into their own words, their own framing, their own, like, to adopt, you must adapt. And then we can feedback off of each other as we go.
Yeah.
I'm going to drop my old avatar space into the chat so you can just get an idea of like a way this knowledge is embedded into Notion. Just be aware it is not complete and it is dead. It's not going to be a lot more updates, but it is there.
Matthew, what's your Substack called?
Let me get a link to that.
I've got the iCard game up. That looks fun. And we've got a Notion site. All right, let's have a look at that.
It's actually really simple. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I've just discovered you can build a website with Notion. I was so excited.
Yeah.
So simple.
We've been using that heavily.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
You can pretty much turn your whole database into like a flotilla of websites. Just publish like a whole set domains, and every page is its own website at that point. Like,
it's amazing. I'm really happy with it.
And so
I've been growing a knowledge garden in Obsidian, and then what I'm going to do is, now I've discovered Notion can do this, I'm going to kind of pull stuff as it comes up into Notion and then put it out. So it's really fun. Oh, here we go. Shine-Ra's Guardian Space. Oh, this is cool.
So this is all my personal interpretations of the icon, in which each section is broken up into drop-down menus and embedded pages that are relativized to each district and every element. And I seek to just repeat that pattern of 5+1 across everything, and just follow it 3 layers deep and fill it with my own tool. Josh?
Yeah, what do you mean by 5+1?
So I'm going to use some language that's probably not common to my project members all the way, because it's my own way of doing it. So we've got 4 elements as our primaries, and the 5th one is spirit, which is all the elements of the union. So we have 4 elements as our secondaries, with the 5th being spirit. Those are the same. So we have 9 elements. In that, if we were to break these up into 2 sets of categories, we've got the 4 primaries, spirit, and the space that they hold is the 6th. But you can't count that as a complete element because it's unbounded. Right? It's just offering space in the communion between the whole and the parts.
You're reminding me of Jen's icon, the star tetrahedron. which you may be aware that the 64-star tetrahedron is, it has a space on the very inside that is speculated as the structure of reality by some particular folks. And so, yeah, just what you're saying there just feels like it relates to each other in some way, and I thought I'd point that out.
Thanks. I'm going to look that up, the star tetrahedron.
I
I
forget
am
what
wondering.
the name is. Maybe Jen knows.
It was Jen here who was it saying it?
It's my avatar on Zoom, my little ident thingy.
Oh, this, yes.
Do you remember the name of the guy I'm talking about, though, Jen? Are you familiar with what I've said?
You know, I've got ADHD, and things fade off a lot for me. I kind of got the feeling in the core of them, but names and what have you,
No stress, no stress. I thought you might be able to share it with Reed because I've forgotten it as well.
Right. It might come back to me, but
I can see rather immediately upon looking at it. I am familiar with the shape, but I see it in conjunction with what's known as Metatron's cube, and that is say an aggregate of the Platonic solids, and that at the center of that tesseract there is speculated, definitely by myself and many occultists in the past, plus other certain people I don't know of yet, that at the center of that is the architecture of reality, right? The fundamental architecture of reality and the overarching architecture of reality. So yes. Tessography, by the way, Jim's favorite practice, is the mapping of the tesseract, which includes that cartography of the tesseract, tessography. And that is the basis of the pattern language, is this, to try to map the fundamental nature of reality and have that be at the core, non-represented, of course, because you can't put that into an accurate symbol. But, what's the thing that includes everything the most? Nothing. That's why there's nothing at the center of the symbol.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I think if you've had any major psychedelic trips, you kind of come back with a kind of desire to a sort of quest to find patterns and foundational things, and I think you come back with this kind of desire, having. Not everybody gets these experiences, but it's not unusual to have some sort of archetypal experience. Maybe someone sees a ship with symbols underneath it. I had my own particular experience, and they vary, but there is a pattern to it of some kind of fundamental stuff at the base of the universe, and then that perhaps we can start to I say to Ayn Rand when we have met in another room, like the learning to move your body in a certain way and these kind of things, and we even start to see people using the symbols and the movements and the whatever's going on. There's kind of an embodied symbolic, oh my god, the words don't work, do they? You know what I mean, if you've had that experience.
Well, I'll say this. I think that goes into what I've been calling spell casting. But spell as in spell language, like spelling, but that the words basically are spells. What they do is they reference it's your reference. The word is your reference to a concept or to an idea, to a wavelength, let's say. And the wavelength, those are in reality, those are here. So you have absolute influence of those things, and your words matter. So this is manifestation, this is prayer, this is your general thoughts. These are waves that you are that are both influencing and being influenced by your environment. And so it's about being able to reference the right frequency, reference the right it can be in any language that you want, but it's about it can be any symbol you want, any whatever you want, but it's about its reference to the next concept and the next concept, like neurons in the brain. The ideas have to be next to each other properly, associated by proximity for the chain of thought to move through that space like a story. And so the structures of our brain and it are the structures of universe. It's all built on the same pattern. And if we recognize that and use it top to bottom, we know we're in alignment with reality. And that's the Tesseract, is just being able to see those alignments as they're happening in quick fashion, quick order, and just seeing the story as it's unfolding through that. And yeah, that's tessography. So it's a wonderful
That's
thing.
really interesting.
Yeah.
And I mean, the spell casting thing, I mean, it's incredible that we don't believe in spells, because we've got this a kind of dimension of ideas. I mean, how do you weigh an idea? How do you measure it? How do you weigh a poem? And yet, you listen to the words of a song, or Martin Luther's writing on the door of a church changes the course of history. So although we can't weigh it or measure it, it has a profound effect on the surface of the planet. The fact that someone designs or however they come up with a pyramid or what have you, which has a terrific effect on our planet. Everything we build, everything we make is altering things, and they come from this dimension of thought, which we have actually no way of measuring at all. It's a common space. It's not weird and unusual. We're using it all the time, and it is magical because we say things and things happen.
I would venture to say yes and maybe.
But
I would say I would say there is a way to measure it. Okay, I think it's in the fundamental value of its consequence. So let's just call that time. Let's just say its effect over time, because at the base level that has to take time to travel, whatever it is on whatever scale, has to take time to travel to know that it's happened, gone there, come back, like a light beam reflecting, like a proton reflecting. It has to go there, get back, and then be processed at least in order for something for you to have recognized it, right? There's steps there. So I guess that's all I'm trying. I got lost in that thought there, but basically, there's some amount of order of operations that has to take place before you can make the measurement, and that takes time before you even can call it time. You can't even call it. You don't have the language. By the time a real unit of time ticks, you can't before it even ticks. You don't have the language built up to be able to say that. Even in my sentence, there's so many ticks of time that took place for me to even convey that. And then the point is, like, that small unit just gives us a basis for what's valuable. It's time, because if you can say something quicker, if you can convey it more shortly from a greater distance, you're shortcutting the time it would take to explain all these things out. If I had said this eloquently in just a few sentences, something wise or poetic, and you just got it, then I wouldn't have had to say all of these other words. And so it would have been a better spell.
No, because I can summarize what you're saying as xenolinguistics, but that's just like an iota of pure content that is nothing without context.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is valuable in that regard, and the shortcuts that I've just taken by summarizing it in such a dense way decontextualizes it, and it loses all its value to anyone but me. and so the time that's saved is not actually saved, because then I need to start explaining it, what I mean by this one point, right? So we end up in a double loop.
I'm going to throw a third body into that. And this
Yeah, go for it.
the three body problem. In you summarizing everything he was just saying into this really condensed term that no one else has access to, I now immediately have the option to begin interpretation of that symbol and start to creatively extrapolate what it might mean. And so it became generative of a variety of new perspectives upon this whole subject that wouldn't have been present if you hadn't have made that move to summarize past our ability to access an immediate moment.
So there's something interesting going on here. I used to hang out at the Stoa loads of times, and some parts of the Stoa got hyper intellectual. I mean, and I went to I played empathy games with the guys and what have you, and it just got so inaccessible more and more. And it was like this ego, they played empathy circles. It was not empathy at all. It was like this ego climb of more and more complex notions and using the correct terms, and they're super well read, and then really unnecessary language as well. And I kind of think with Josh, what he says is so right. It's almost as if can we distill, it's like Alexander's pattern language, can we find this distillation of ideas, so not distinct, because every time you distinct, you're cutting it up and you're using the knife into smaller and smaller pieces, and not too, I suppose it almost, should it be fluffy, should it be vague, or maybe centers of gravity for ideas that kind of meld with other ideas, and yet there is enough distinction without boundaries. I don't know. I'm
Can I help?
Playing with something, yeah.
Well, I think what you're pointing to is actually what Jim was initially explaining with tessiography. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but I have an intuitive grasp of what he is pointing to and find very valuable. That can be seen in the geometrical symbols that the group are playing with as a language of will, not functional being, but specifically will. Will being just pure frame, basically. And so within that, there is what's being shown in front of us as a symbol, but particularly the symbol is a representation of something else that is much more alive and real. I'm not sure I can really say more, because the language is more gestural than linguistic. If you're paying attention, you'll notice it. I've been particularly watching Jim and Einra from such a perspective. But I can't say what it is, right? This is the catch-22 of non-linguistic languages, which sounds like a complete fucking oxymoron. But we can dance around it and point at the moon, which I believe is what Jim's kind of doing with tessiography or whatever it is. And I could point to other references that point at the same moon through other descriptors, and you'll find it in other spaces as well. There's lots and lots of overlapping spaces. Semantics and neurolinguistics would be two spaces that would talk about these things linguistically, though it's not a linguistic language, and that's really frustrating to try and talk about. So I'm just going to point back to Jim's opening statement, and maybe that's enough.
It's a pattern language. Communicates in patterns, whatever the medium.
Yeah.
Along those lines, yeah.
Well, and see, I think that's part of the theory of this is taking those other systems that do point towards more analytical, more analogical practices of language or communication generally, because there's all means of different ways of communicating. We don't use tonal language, language like Chinese, Mandarin is in our language like they do, but if we took one of their words and used it, we'd have to adapt ourselves into their use of that. The point being that as far as tessography goes, it's and the symbolism, the language itself, it's intended to gesture at the moon, yes. Gesture at these other anchoring points and reference through them what's common about them. We all see the moon, there it is, right? So it has an underlying framework of just let's start off where it's common. But then we take more complex things like the E8 lattice structure. That is quantum gravity research, where they're putting together simulative models of how they think. Basically, I would call it a tesseract, but an 8-dimensional object can move around in space, and where you see these platforms, it goes out of focus and comes back into focus. And when you get these angles where things line up, you have platforms and shapes that emerge out of those. The thing that is the structure that's there is representing those things, but what we see when we actually zoom out is a platform of some kind, some stable structure, a triangle, a square, a circle, just some pattern. Those patterns, as you zoom out further, are the same. And I guess I think to relate it back around is that that it takes multi-dimensional communication through specific language structured in alignment with reality. It just has to reference something that we can all agree to, and that's good enough, satisficient. And if enough of those things are satisficient, at least we have a map of what we've seen, and that would be the hope, is that we're able to see it, and we can make decisions past that. We tell stories past that. But I don't know. Maybe I missed where you were pointing to specifically.
No, you're right. Well, on a wonderful elaboration of the same theme in a new perspective, right? So, like, I can take it and say yes, and which is what you were doing, which suits me just fine. Something did come up though that ran away, but it felt very interesting.
That happens to me.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking about what we were talking about, and we're in the schoolroom with the knowledge and the philosophy of the past and our scientists. But then if we take these ideas and we go into the garden and decide to dance under the moon, it's a very different experience, of which we're not even looking for answers anymore. We're just being and relating, and our feet are on the grass. Yeah, just something completely different.
The pure experience of it, right? Pure experience.
I was wondering. I think one of the things that's come back to me of the many lost things was it feels appropriate. We're in the vibe circle, right? Anybody aware of Robert Anton Wilson? Yeah. Well, we're talking about pointing at the moon, right? And he's got some very interesting mythopoetics around our the evolution of our communication structures, I suppose. And so he says, yeah, pretty much, you know, he breaks things down like, yeah, pretty much everything. Purrs or snarls, blessings or curses, right? But specifically outside of those two, just adding some context to why this came to me was the moon. Okay, why did the moon come to me? Because Robert Anton Wilson. It's like, why does the moon keep reoccurring as a theme? Oh, it's that giant primordial nipple in the sky. The first thing we see. And I just thought that was funny. So since it came to mind, I thought I'd share. So now you have another perspective on the moon, which we were pointing at a minute ago.
It's a good dog.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Some of my favorite parts of this pattern language, it is like the living experience just expressing itself, is when I forget all the words because I'm so immersed in the experience that I'm not thinking about the terms or the concepts. I just in the patterns. That's what came up for me when you're talking about dancing in the garden under the moon. Right? I'm doing it. I'm not thinking it to the maximal degree. And I love being able to come back into like the thinking and go back into the experiencing. And that's this development play dynamic that we try to really exemplify here in the project. Is like, well, we come together, design, develop, then we go play it and don't think about all the scaffolding and architecture, but we pay attention with our, let's say, unconscious attunement to the patterns, so that we can find design elements to update when we come back. Ooh, we can fiddle this little bit, fiddle that little bit, and that's going to alter our experience in these ways. And then we go back out, experience, come back, and just have like this flow in that light. We also have a ritual, as per these moon references. When we depart, we do this little snap to show that, oh, well, I see you, and we see the moon, right? So it's this triangulation between each other and the common moon, which symbolic, just many moons. But it's just we know that this moon is us showing up together in the circle, and it was meaningful, and we learned something. There was love, and so yeah, very ubiquitous things.
Well, on that wholesome note, do that. Moon's over there.
Yes,
Moon's over there in my world.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, everyone, for a really, really good discussion. It's been cool.
Tomorrow there's another one at 2 on the iGame. So if you have time, love to see you.
Okay.
2 o'clock tomorrow time.
I'm not here, but yeah. Thanks a lot. Bye.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. That's a lot of fun.
Or I remain.
In the end, there will always be only Flurid. One who remains.
In darkness, not in darkness. In darkness, not in darkness. Yeah. I want you to understand more about the township. As yeah, visuals are interesting, and yeah, I like to imagine more about it. Still, yes, it was difficult to get grasp what it is. I like playing the Matthews, this plant growing garden game. Yeah, sharing here.
Yeah. So yeah, I think you mentioned the garden game, and you do you want to know more about that specific specifically, or about any particular part? Are there any key words?
Yeah, I mean, sure, I'd like to work continuously as I'm building this core alternative open source customizable to the platform of the Gallery Town that I have been building, which means we can deploy, build, develop these game platforms customizable as well. Yeah, deploy AI agents and so on, and train our own AI to help us and so on. Make collective intelligence of the community and so on. Yes.
Perfect. Yes. Man, yes. So I guess my question is, how can we help you?
Right?
Yeah. How can we work together? Yeah.
I have 2 points of overlap that I'm aware of, and I'm just tossing them out there for whatever happens. Common ontology. As I understand, that's essential to Acropolis OS. It's also what the Township analogically harmonized language is meant to be a demonstration of. Here's a category of a thing that you can do in a community. Here's our version of it. And it's worked really good for us. We have theories about how it will scale once it gets past this small group and the boundaries just keep going. But we don't know until we get there. So we're not saying this is the way to do it. But for us, it works really well. But it's really the category, common ontology. So I know that bridge is there. That's something we could co-create a more common version of. And then there's the map building. So, wow, the Discord clone is really cool. I know it's in its seed stage. Basically, Fleurin has been working on a map that he can run as a 2D version that is linked to a Discord, and in the Discord have that be a basic interface for his Acropolis.os, in addition to his LightRag backend, more technical version. And to have all of those coordinated as like, and use that map from that Gathertown clone map as the means by which to operate the community that would be his demonstrative first example of how Acropolis.os would cohere communities to scale. And so in that, we have this symbolic architecture of mapping the Tesseract that is flattened into a 2D representation. So aligns well with the map, so to speak, and could be an embedding of the entire integrated ontological framework directly into the map, so that people are literally walking through the landscape of languages that defines for their common usage. And so there could be like the propositional format where you say, here's the ontology in all these words. And then there's the participatory format where you say, here's the ontology as a commons. Come in it and be of it. Don't even worry about the words. You're doing it just by interacting with the map. And so those are two parallels to me that stand out. But of course, there's so many, and I'm down to play any of them.
Yeah, the building a guild and township. I mean, what I'm building is just technological foundation and support, and the guild and township. It's the content. It's the content. Yes.
Yep.
Board games are contents too.
Right. So we can plug in the content. Yes. Okay. Content aspect of it. Okay. Yes. So map building, common ontology, and now I love to hear about what you're doing, Florin, with this. I didn't know Discord had anything. Like, I don't have a conception for how this plugs into Discord from the maps in GatherTown other than images popping up. So maybe there's something more complex there I haven't seen. But it sounds amazing. I believe every bit of it and its potential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Discord is just a useful tool to make a community, like organize identities, members, gives permission to certain people, and yeah. I was also integrating the Discord, the video and voice channel into the 2D map initially. So I was building the 2D map, but just basically based on a Discord. But it turns out that it is not that practical. So I'm still using the Discord for the identity, but not the voice channel function. I'm just building its own voice channel video call on its own.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
So yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I tried to build. Yeah.
So one of the things that we plan on doing in this GatherTown map is putting up what we call the quest board. On the quest board are just the things that the community wants to get done. Right? We can have common quests, party quests, individual quests, work quests, etc., etc. I guess my hope would be, because I want to see this invitation to work together come to fruition in an organic way that also accommodates like precise needs. So I just want to, I would love a repository of like, well, this is the task. Here's what it does for person X through Z through A through B, etc. And this is how you can show up for it. And this is a provisional deadline, whatever details are necessary to communicate the quest. Then I can go sign on to that and say, I'm there, I will do that task. And we can set timings from that position as well. So this doesn't have to be the way by which the thing moves forward. I just wanted to put it out there as a method by which we could start to logistically approach this.
Right. So, so we could, like, I've built many quest boards, and it would be a matter of just which platform to build it on, and then how does that plug into the GatherTown space and or other social media spaces. Yeah, Reed.
For now, right here. Me and Victor were already experimenting with plugging it into the vibe circle. Gosh, the object might even still be here. Check the map view. Yeah, hit X. Anyone who's by this little violin thing in the top left, and you will discover a link that's broken. So, like I said, we're experimenting, but the objects here, we just got to get the embedding into iframes technicalities worked out.
Okay. And so that's through Coda.
Yeah, that will be through Coda. And from that, you can coordinate anything, any other technologies.
Yeah. So what I suggest is that we do we set a time for a workshop between between anyone who's involved in this particular pipeline. So Florin, Victor, Reed. I don't know if there's any others we'd want to include specifically. Matthew would be, I mean, anyone else from the township is welcome to come. I'm just thinking about the specific roles that we have to play with this pipeline. And if just getting the quest boards up so that anyone who wants to use the quest boards can do so without getting overwhelmed by it or whatnot, I think that's kind of our goal. And if we can just set up a meeting to discuss what we want it to show, just a design meeting basically between those who have right access to the CODA Quest board database. If that makes sense, then yeah, I would like to set that up as the next step for making the township gather town space alive.
Well, that will be a matter of reaching out to them.
Have you guys made clear what quest boards are to the group?
Currently,
I just mean like in this conversation that I may have missed already. I just don't want to make you retread. I just was curious what you guys mean by quest boards.
well, I to be honest, I am never sure if anything I say makes anything clear to anybody.
Totally.
But in that case, I will repeat it in.
Well, yeah, because I had signed off for maybe like 40 minutes or so, so I don't think it's any reflection on you.
I was serious. I'm never sure, but yeah. And so basically, we just want a public bulletin board that says that people in the community can come put up a post and say, "I would like to do this thing, and I would like to do it with you. Whoever wants to help me do it, and this is what it takes to do it, and this is how it would benefit the community." Or you, or me, and
got it. Great, cool. Thank you.
Of course, thank you. My second time saying it was way better than the first one. On reflection, I said more things. Simply was better.
Elegance is a pursuit, not a moment, you know.
Even. But yeah. I guess that's pretty much. I feel complete. There's a next step, which is to sign up. Who wants to co-design a quest board together? That's the
Cool. Great.
Any thoughts or questions or non sequiturs that are unrelated entirely? Like, circle's open.
Yeah, cool. Well, I continue to feel some level of curiosity about I suppose probably the exact areas one might assume that I'm curious about, given the little you guys may know about me. But yeah, I'm curious to be in dialogue with you guys about what you see with regards to like my senses, like the tower, the sacred mountain, the rites of, kind of pilgrimage sorts of spaces. Yeah, and again, I think I've mentioned to you guys before, there's whatever I'm working on that is called the Temple of the Goddess, which to me is like something that it exists in all places and all times. It's really not like it's not a physical thing. But at the same time, it's something that if it were to have a physical reality, would require a lot of money. And and so my kind of curiosity genuinely is like, actually, this might be a really amazing way to actually like build a temple unironically, but also not have to have $5 million or whatever, so I'm genuinely very curious about that. Like, I also am not trying to like impose that on anybody, but especially with how the listening circles have been going during Limicon and the feedback I've been getting as I've been going, I think having like a space that feels unique for the exploration of those circles just feels kind of rad. So yeah, I'm kind of curious, like, if this ends up being a way of kind of continuing to explore this temple of the goddess sort of vibe, so that's all, just naming that.
For sure. Yes. yes, the happy medium between these things at any point in time, but what you want to do and what comes into your mind, what you're compelled to do, and reality is art. Really, it's the art of it. At the end of the day, it's the presentation of it. What are you intending to do with it? If it just needs to be a concept that's conveyed through expressions, then then express it as such. But if it's one that can be hard coded, let's say, into an artifact that does that expression without somebody being there, then you've offloaded that, maybe not the responsibility to express through it, but you've offloaded the necessity to hold all those values and transfer them to translate them to somebody else. And so if those are worthwhile ideas, then those are good things to artifact. Like a school that teaches with its environment and not just the teachers. If you can imagine a kid just walking into the school structure with the other kids or whatever, and just by nature of whoever they are, walking through this maze of games and games leading to other games and kids choosing preferences down this road, but all still staying in the school, heading towards the exit.
Never really left the neighborhood.
Then,
Sorry about that. My dog and my wife were just talking to each other, and I didn't realize my mic was on. Sorry.
Okay. No worries.
I would like to propose just that we set a time aside to have, say, an discussion.
Yeah.
Like let his questions guide us to what we can offer in terms of connection and insight.
Yeah, that sounds great. Great.
Yeah.
Yep, we'll figure that out.
Amen.
Love that. Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for your time, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you again.
Please say hi to Inara and Ghost for me if you get the chance.
I will. Cheers.
Yeah. So, but I guess just to cap it out, generally, that quest boards are a thing. We're going to be doing that. Let's see, given that example with the school and the kids, but that was that other thought. We're saving that for later, yeah? Or was that?
That was something that I feel I understand, but I don't want to assume that I do in any sort of response in the moment, and would like to let his questions about pilgrimage, spiritual mountain, tower guide us in giving him more precise ranges of response. Because I'm not 100% sure, like he wants to, what I heard was a way of circumnavigating the $5 million price ticket upon building a literal, in the form of reality, temple to the goddess. Even though the temple to the goddess is timeless and thus in all versions of time, he sees a route to potentially instantiating like the version he had conceived of through relationality here. And so to me, it sounds like a very precise thing while being very ethereal at the same time. And I would just like to start as a listener first to his list of questions before I know exactly where to go. So those are my thoughts. Anyway. I dig
that.
All right.
I dig that. Yeah.
Did you have more questions?
Well, I think we should.
Go ahead.
And dedicate
you're saying for a meeting, yeah, that's what I was asking. Are we putting that into a container or an event for another time, a scheduled event? Yeah,
a meeting. I'd say probably just us three to start with, or Anara too, or whoever else. Not my call.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. No, I'm sure Inara would be cool. Yeah.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night. And
Good
we
night,
have
Florin.
a date with Florin too, whenever Florin's got time. Good night.
Sweet. Good old Florin.
I know. I love it.
Great. Yeah. And yeah, no, I'm happy to set up a time soon. I'll text you, Reed, about that in the future.
Most excellent.
We'll see if we can get into the quest board.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what even just comes of that. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, we will send you an invite when we do the design meeting. Which ironic. Do we need a quest board to put the design for the quest board onto the
quest number 1? Quest for the quest board.
Just to see, what unfolds, but no need to engage, if you guys are on your way kind of through and on to other things.
Mostly cross contain what you're experiencing there. I'd call cross container contamination. It's like, trying to cap out certain conversations while keeping other ones going. So it gets a little dicey in here, but not for lack of engagement in the conversation we were having there.
Totally.
Yeah. I think there's ways for these things to converge. Reed and I often try to hope to converge them when possible.
So the points that I have in my head are 3, and these would be sessions. There'd be one session about designing a quest board that works the best for the community, and it's open to the community, anyone who wants to participate. Another quest, which is having a more personal session with Matt and Anara about their vision and how we might show up to potentially amplify that signal into fruition. A third one that would probably be a more personal between Victor and Fleurin and other interested parties about the potentiality of embedding, of just going about crafting a common ontology amongst the community and embedding it into a map on a Gather Town clone on the Discord. And so we don't have times on any of those currently. I think it's more a case of I'm on here a lot and you're on here a lot, and just got to make the connections on time setting when it happens. Yeah. I'm going to start with Victor about that quest board meeting. As soon as I can get a time from him, I'll let you know. And you tell me your times that you're available, and then I'm going to go bug him. And we'll figure it out between us.
Yeah. I would be happy to, I would be happy to fill out the info if we just had the quest board for me to do that into, right? And so and I believe so, my first step is just going to be talking to Victor about the back end stuff of where it is and making sure it's plugged in. But after that, then we can arrange for those quests to be on the board and then start filling in the details. If nothing else, but then by our next Friday meeting. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So just rest assured, I will be pursuing those on my own end, and in your own pursuit, we shall meet at a nexus of some sort, and a garden will grow.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right, sir. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I mean, man, yeah, good stuff.
2.5 session.
Uh-huh.
Good
Fire and
work.
water.
Yes. Did I do that too early? I may have. Anyway, we can do it again. Did you have other stuff to say?
Oh no, that was it. Fire and water. That works. Bam.
Yep.
Perfect timing.
Yes.
Fine, you might say.
Always.
Yes.
All right. Thank
All
you
right.
for your time.
Thank you for yours and this experience. Fantastic. There's Victor.
Thanks, Victor. Right.